Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome all to this um, webinar. And today is my first topic, that is approach to primary immunodeficiency. As we all know that defense system is very important for anybody, for the world, be it for the country or for a human body or for a cell. So, and what will happen if this defense system is damaged, if this defense system is injured? And this we will discuss what will happen if our body's defense system is itself defective. So that is the, this is a very vast topic. I have been given the approach because each and every disease is different and each and every disease has different clinical presentation, different diagnostic evaluation. So I will discuss how to approach, how to go from one group to another group. Then subsequently other diseases will be discussed one by one. So what will happen to the body when the immunocytes will get sick? What are immunocytes? That already Rashna ma'am has discussed, and she has discussed it very elaborately for the function of each and every cell that I did not tell. So the learning objectives of this session will be: what is the definition of primary immunodeficiency, how we classify primary immunodeficiency, and how we, what is the clinical criteria, when to suspect, when a clinician will suspect primary immunodeficiency, and what are the clinical presentations, and how we will proceed further in investigation wise to diagnose a case of suspected immunodeficiency. So the group of primary immunodeficiency disease are otherwise known as inborn errors of immunity. So these are inherited disorders. These are genetic defects that result in defect in development and or function of the either innate immunity, that is the macrophages, neutrophils, dendritic cells or complement system, or adaptive immunity, those are the B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. So prevalence of primary immunodeficiency as per one US study, it was 1 in 1200 live births. Now new papers have come up. It is up to 2000 to 2500. In some papers they have described, except selective IgA deficiency, which is very common. That is 1 in 300 to 500 persons, and more than 300 diseases. In fact, 430 diseases have been identified till now, and the list is growing. And the children with primary immunodeficiency are usually susceptible to three things. One is infection, one is which is the most common presentation of primary immunodeficiency. Another is autoimmune disease and malignancies. So the most recent update on classification of primary immunodeficiency was published in January 2020 in Journal of Clinical Immunology. The group of immunologists, that is the form International Union of Immunological Society, IUIS. It was first started in 1970, and every 2 years they update the classification of this PID, add new group of diseases, new mutations, etc. And the most recent was done in 2019 update. According to 2019 IUIS update, total 404 diseases included, in which there are 430 genetic mutations were identified. The distinct, even if the same gene is involved, different mechanism give rise to different diseases, like loss of function mutation, gain of function mutation, haploinsufficiency, dominant negative. These all different mechanisms give rise to different type of diseases. So this IUIS committee classification, they have divided into 10 major groups. They have given these diseases in table forms. There are 10 big extensive tables which can be summarized as: in the category 1, the immunodeficiency affected was mainly cellular and humoral immunodeficiency. The group diseases include primarily SCID. In category 2, it is combined immunodeficiency with associated syndromic features. They are Biskott-Aldrich syndrome, hyper-IgE syndrome, and ataxia telangiectasia. In category 3, include predominantly antibody deficiencies. They are X-linked and autosomal recessive arthromoglobulinemia, common variable immunodeficiency. In category 4, they include diseases of immune dysregulation. They are familial HLH. In category 5, basically includes phagocyte defect, that is neutropenia, chronic granulomatous disease, and leukocyte adhesion defect. Category 6 include defect in intrinsic and innate immunity system, includes Mendelian susceptibility to mycobacterial disease, STAT1 deficiency. Category 7, in this group, there are auto-inflammatory diseases, that is the familial Mediterranean fever, Cinca, Nomad, Dira, Ditra, etc. They are included in category 7. In category 8, complement deficiencies. This 9 was the recent addition after 2018 update. This group 9 include genes that cause bone marrow failure, that is Fanconi's anemia and dyskeratosis congenita. And group 10 are specific phenocopies of primary immunodeficiencies, which could not be included in any other group. So this is the basic classification given in a pictorial form. So how these PIDs are originated? PIDs, as I have said, these are basically genetic the defects originating from the development during the development of the immunocytes. So as we all know, from 3rd to 5th week, the pluripotent stem cell they generate from the yolk sac. Then by 5th week, they go to the liver, then to the bone marrow. And if there is defect in the stem cell, it results in reticular dysgenesis. And the stem cell then divided into two groups: myeloid progenitor cell and lymphoid progenitor cell. In the lymphoid progenitor cell, or pre-B development from pre-B to mature B cell, if there is a defect, there occurs severe combined immunodeficiency, which is a immunological emergency. Then in pre-T cell, from pre-T cell to, if there is defect in thymus, then there is DGERD syndrome. And others are, if the myeloid progenitor cell is affected, then the immune defects are like congenital agranulocytosis, chronic granulomatous disease, leukocyte adhesion defect, etc. So this was the theoretical approach of classification of PID, but as a clinician, when to suspect PID, primary immunodeficiency, since the clinical manifestations are varied and multisystemic clinical features, so diagnosis in first visit is difficult unless until all the features are manifested at that time of visit. So, to suspect primary immunodeficiency, warning signs are given by Jeffrey and Mobile Foundation that help in suspecting primary immunodeficiency. There are 10 warning signs: 4 or more new ear infection within 1 year, 2 or more serious sinus infection within 1 year, 2 or more months of antibiotics with little effect, 2 or more pneumonia within 1 year, failure of an infant to gain weight or grow normally, ruling out other causes, recurrent deep skin or organ abscesses, persistent thrush in mouth or fungal infection in the skin, need for IV antibiotics to clear infections, and 2 or more deep-seated infections, including septicemia. And a family history of primary immunodeficiency disease or a history of primary immunodeficiency in a sibling raises the suspicion of PID in the patient. So, from the age of presentation also, one can categorize to which group the child may belong. If PID is suspected in a newborn or young infant, it is predominantly T cell deficiency. It can be granulocyte defect or Biskott-Aldrich syndrome. In infants and young children, because till 9 months the maternal antibodies persist. So after 9 months, if the patient presents with recurrent sinopulmonary infection, then we can suspect B cell defect. Complement defect can present at any age. And if there is family history of primary immunodeficiency or history of sibling death, due to diagnosed primary immunodeficiency, then the suspicion is very high for PID. And As we know that infections are the most common presentation of primary immunodeficiency. So the type of infection, the organism causing infection, and the severity of infection will give us a clue to what primary immunodeficiency is being suspected. So from the location of infection, organism, frequency, and seriousness and response to therapy will give us a clue. As like in T cells, when the T cells are involved, then mostly intracellular organisms, infection by intracellular organisms occur, and streptococcal infection invisibly occurs. For example, SCID, DJOT syndrome, etc. When B cells are affected, mainly capsulated organism infections occur, like pneumococcus, streptococcus, Haemophilus influenza, etc. For example, IgM and IgG deficiency. And in B cell infection, one group of virus, that is enterovirus infection, is very common, as in selective IgA deficiency. Then when phagocytes are involved, mainly Staphylococcus, Klebsiella, and Pseudomonas infection is more common. And when delayed components of the complement system are affected, then Neisseria infection is common. And when early components of the complement system are affected, mainly capsulated organism like Heap, Streptococcus, and Pneumococcus infection is common. So from organism, when we see a patient, so how to suspect from the clinical examination? What are the clinical clues for suspecting PID? If there is severe eczema with other manifestations not responding, suspect Biskott-Aldrich syndrome, IPIX, hyper-IgA syndrome. Hypopigmented hair, there are three groups of diseases: cartilage hair hypoplasia, Chediak Higashi, and Griscelli syndrome, that I will tell how to differentiate. If there are ocular telangiectasia, then suspect ataxia telangiectasia. In oculocutaneous albinism, suspect Chediak Higashi syndrome. If there is severe dermatitis, suspect Omenn syndrome. Erythroderma occurs in Omenn syndrome, SCID, and graft versus host disease. And recurrent abscesses and cellulitis occur in chronic granulomatous disease and hyper-IgA syndrome and leukocyte adhesion deficiency. Cutaneous granulomas are seen in SCID, common variable immunodeficiency, and BRAC deficiency, which is a group of SCID in the first category, and also in some cases of ataxia telangiectasia. Oral ulcers are seen in chronic granulomatous disease, congenital neutropenia. Then basically neutrophil defect result in periodontitis, gingivitis, and stomatitis. And T cell defect result in poorly responding oral or skin candidiasis. Then vitiligo, alopecia occurs in B cell defect, and chronic conjunctivitis is also seen in B cell. So this is a case of eczema in Biskott-Aldrich syndrome, and there is extensive mucocutaneous candidiasis and START1 gain of function mutation, and this is a case of neutrophil defect, where there is no pus formation in the ulcer in sacral region, but there is no pus formation. Ocular telangiectasia and ataxia telangiectasia, then oculocutaneous albinism, as in Chediak Higashi syndrome, extensive molluscum contagiosum, and granulomas in SCID, CVID, and erythroderma is in Omenn syndrome. So, if a patient has eczema with recurrent infections and bleeding manifestations in the form of petechiae and purpura, and on screening examination we see thrombocytopenia with small size platelets, then clinically we can suspect Biskott-Aldrich syndrome, and we can confirm the diagnosis by reduced expression of Biskott-Aldrich syndrome protein in peripheral blood mononuclear cells on flow cytometry, and mutation of Biskott-Aldrich syndrome gene. And if there is eczema with recurrent staphylococcal infections and cold abscess specifically, and on screening examination there is hypereosinophilia with high level of serum IgE, we can clinically suspect autosomal dominant hyper-IgE syndrome, and we can confirm this by this next-gen sequencing with reduced p-STAT3. And eczema with extensive molluscum contagiosum and recurrent abscess with allergic manifestations and hypereosinophilia. This can be autosomal recessive hyper IgE syndrome. In autosomal dominant hyper IgE syndrome, there is recurrent staphylococcal infection. In autosomal recessive, there is extensive molluscum contagiosum along with staphylococcal infection and allergy manifestations. The patient has eczema with large watery diarrhea and endocrinopathy in the form of type 1 diabetes, sometimes hypothyroidism. With high serum IgE level, then we can suspect IPEX, and we can send for FOXP3 gene mutation, in which there is reduced T regulatory cell expression. So when a patient has chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis, along with that, as I have said, chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis is a pointer towards T cell deficiency. And along with that, we can categorize these into different groups depending on the manifestation. The candidiasis with recurrent staphylococcal infection and cold abscess group cases, as I have previously discussed, it is autosomal dominant hyper IgE syndrome. Then candidiasis with additions disease, hypoparathyroidism, endocrinopathies. Then mutation, we can suspect APCD, that is autoimmune polyendocrinopathies, and candidiasis with recurrent pneumonia, recurrent viral infection, we can suspect STAT1 gain of function mutation, and candidiasis with non-tuberculous bacteria infection, mycobacterial infection, or severe salmonella infection, we can suspect this IL-12 or beta-1 deficiency. And child with suspected primary immunodeficiency and hypopigmented hair and skin. In this group, examination of the hair shaft in oil immersion microscopy can help in differentiating the group of disease. If you are clinically suspecting PID, there is hypopigmented hair and features of HLH are there. Then, and on hair shaft examination, there are irregular clumps of pigment deposit. Then Viscelli syndrome is suspected. If hypopigmented hair with HLH manifestation, HLH, bleeding manifestation, neurological manifestation, and on hair shaft examination, there is small and regular pigment clump deposits, then we suspect Chidiac-Higashi syndrome. Another method to diagnose Chidiac-Higashi syndrome is also by detecting the PAS positive perinuclear intracytoplasmic granules in the neutrophils, eosinophils, and lymphocytes in the myeloid cells in the peripheral smear. So this is one way to diagnose Chidiac-Higashi syndrome. And if there are bleeding manifestations with normal platelet count, no HLH, and on hair shaft examination there are no pigment clumps, then we can suspect Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So this was dermatological manifestation of PID. Now endocrine manifestations. If there is hypoparathyroidism, it can occur in Bichard syndrome, mucocutaneous candidiasis, multiple endocrinopathy in APCD, diabetes, hypothyroidism, IPEX, that is immune dysregulation, polyendocrinopathy, X-linked syndrome that occurs due to FOXP3 mutation. Growth hormone deficiency can be seen in X-linked diagamma-globulinemia, and gonadal dysgenesis can be seen in mucocutaneous candidiasis. And hematological manifestations of PID, hemolytic anemia seen in B and T cell immune defect, and autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome. As we all know, thrombocytopenia with microplatelets, diagnostic of Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, neutropenia, it's seen in hyper IgE syndrome, some variants of Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome has, along with thrombocytopenia, neutropenia, and immune thrombocytopenia, it's seen in B cell immune defect and autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome. Then skeletal manifestations, short-limb dwarfism. In short-limb dwarfism with T and or B cell defect, bony dysplasia is seen in one group of SCID, that is ADA deficiency, and also in cartilage hair hyperplasia. Arthritis is seen in antibody defect, Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, and hyper IgE syndrome. So, after this, history and clinical examination. History of recurrent infections, the sum of the criteria falling into Jeffrey Model Foundation's warning signs, and on physical examination, that is cutaneous findings, some endocrine findings, when the physical examination suggesting some group of disease, then we have to send some investigations to confirm primary immunodeficiency. Before that, screening investigations are sent. The most important and most widely used screening is complete blood count with differential count. In a complete blood count, differential count, we can rule out primary immunodeficiency diseases. Like if there is normal absolute lymphocyte count, then T cell deficiency is unlikely. If normal absolute neutrophil count, then neutropenia, congenital neutropenia, and leukocyte adhesion deficiency is unlikely. If the platelets are normal, then Biskott-Aldrich syndrome is unlikely. If Havel-Jolly's bodies are absent, it rules out asplenia. And in normal ESR, chronic infections are unlikely. But the glitch is this lymphocyte count is not fixed for children. Because at birth it is 70s to 30 at 1 year, then at 5 years it is 50s to 50 neutrophil lymphocyte ratio, then during puberty and older age group it is 70-30 neutrophil lymphocyte ratio. So it varies as per age. So we should always match it with the age appropriate range and see whether this is normal for that age or not. Then after seeing that a patient is really having lymphopenia, then we are suspecting T cell deficiency, child is having lymphopenia, then we can go for T cell subpopulation, that is flow cytometry by using monoclonal antibody to detect T cell subpopulation, to detect CD2, CD3, CD4, CD8 cells, and monoclonal antibody to naive and memory T cells. If the T cell population is normal and with flow cytometry it appears normal, but still the suspicion is high, then we can go for T cell functional assay. T cell functional assay by T cell stimulation with mitogens like phytohemagglutinin, concanavalin A, cocoid mitogen, and sometimes antigens like Candida and tetanus toxoid antigens are also used as T cell stimulants. And when we are suspecting B cell deficiency in an infant or child with recurrent cyanopulmonary infection, then we can go for serum level of antibody estimation, IgG-AME serum level estimation. If the antibodies are itself low, then we should first, from the history and clinical examination, rule out protein losing states like nephrosis and protein losing enteropathy. We should rule out them. If they are ruled out and still immunoglobulins are low, then primary B cell deficiency is suspected, and we can confirm by flow cytometry for B cells like CD19 and CD20. And also functional assay. Functional assay, if the antibodies are normal, but still there is high index of suspicion, then we can determine the isohemagglutinin titer, that is the blood antibody, blood group antibody titer. In some children it is absent up to 2 years of age, so we can determine this. Or else the most confirmatory is determination of antibody response to antigen. That is, we first measure the baseline antibodies to diphtheria, tetanus toxoid. Then after giving the antigen as a booster dose, after 2 to 8 weeks, we measure the antibody response. So diphtheria, tetanus toxoid are protein antigens. For polysaccharide antigen, pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccines are used to detect the response to the antigen. The response of the antibody response, the rise in antibody titer to the antigen injected. So, like lymphocyte count, the immunoglobulin level also vary as per age. So we should always try to match it with the age appropriate table. And when we are suspecting phagocytic defect, we suspect phagocytic defect when there is recurrent staphylococcal infection or fungal infection, and neutrophil defect when congenital neutropenia and leukocyte adhesion deficiency. And screening for this chronic granulomatous disease is done by neutrophil respiratory burst after forward stimulation, and confirmation of this leukocyte adhesion deficiency is done by flow cytometry. CD18 and CD11 for LAD type 1 and CD15 for LAD type 2. And complement deficiency is it can be suspected at any age. And in case of invasive infection by encapsulated organism like Neisseria, that is recurrent meningitis, then complement deficiency should be suspected. The screening test for complement deficiency is CH50 assay, and the abnormal CH50 assay shows defect in classical pathway or deficiency of the terminal pathway. And the advanced test is AH50 assay, that is the assay for alternative pathway. Then after detecting either CH50, low CH50 or low AH50, then we can go for specific, in advanced test, we can go for specific component assay for confirmation of that complement factor deficiency. But for CH50 assay, H50 assay, the sample has to be transported and tested very carefully on iced samples. Otherwise, false positive reports will come. So, diagnostic approach to a case of primary immunodeficiency: first, history and physical examination, then screening by CBC and differential counts, and if there are infection, cultures and imaging to know the site of infection, to know the type of infection and the organism affected. And if B cell deficiency is suspected, IgG, AM antibody level, and functional assay by response to antigen injections. And if this complement defect is suspected, then CH50 or H50 assay. If this is mainly for the screening group, mainly for B and T cell deficiency, B T cell complement deficiency, which are usually common. If these three are, if these are normal, but still immunodeficiency is suspected, suspect phagocytic defect. So dihydrorhodamine test for chronic granulomatous disease, flow cytometry for leukocyte adhesion deficiency, and humoral defect, that is B cell, the functional defect, flow cytometry for T cell and B cell, and combined defect can be there. In clinical scenario, the recurrent bacterial infections occur in like sepsis, meningitis, pneumonia, cyanopulmonary infection occur in B cell defect. So in the first tier investigation, the antibody assay is measured. The IgG, IgA, IgM is measured. Recurrent mycobacterial infection usually in T cell defect, and viral infection, that is very severe viral infection, unusual viral infection. In that cases, the first assay is T cell enumeration because T cell defect is suspected, and then fungal infection also T cell defect, and this phagocytic defect is suspected. So dihydrorhodamine test should be done. For screening test for B cell defect is antibodies, isohemoglutinin titer, and response to vaccine antigen. For T cell, if after doing screening test, we can go for advanced test in the form of B cell enumeration. And for T cell defect, screening is lymphocyte count, chest X-ray for examination of the thymus, and TREX, that is seen in SCID by this dried blood sample test, and advanced test by flow cytometry, T cell subset accumulation, CD3, CD4, and CD8 estimation, and proliferative response to microgens. For phagocytic deficiency, the phagocytic defect, WBC count and morphology, in leukocyte adhesion deficiency, the neutrophil without any infection, the baseline neutrophil number will be very high. Then confirmation is by flow cytometry using this CD11 and 15 assay, and CD11, 18, and 15 assay, and respiratory burst assay for this chronic granulomatous disease. And advanced test for chronic granulomatous disease is specific genetic test by next-gen sequencing or whole exome sequencing. For complement deficiency, CH50 is the basic screening test. If CH50 is normal, that is the initial and the terminal pathway is normal, then alternative pathway can be measured by AH50 activity, and specific component defect can also be measured. So these are the different lab investigations through which we can categorize the suspected primary immunodeficiency and later on confirm the primary immunodeficiency by specific genetic test. These are my references. Thank you.
Very crisp presentation, Dr. Naik. The flow was good, and I think, like you have said in the beginning itself, you have rightly pointed out that the part was covered by Dr. Rashna, and the remaining has been done by you. Very well said. Good work done. There are no questions being put on the group. In case I receive some questions, I am going to share it with you. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Dr. Naik. Good work done. Thank you.